You step softly into the ruins of time, where cracked stones cradled stories long forgotten, and the wind whispers secrets that no one asked to hear. Your sandals scuff along a dusty path as you wander deeper into an ancient town, your breath slow, your mind curious, but calm. You're not here for grand battles or forgotten kings. No, today your quest is humbler, stranger, earthier. You are here, to peer into the toilets of the past. Drift closer, the air thick with sunlight and silence. Broken only by the distant caw of a crow who clearly thinks you're wasting your time. Pottery shards and perfume bottles, yes, but also fruit seeds, bones, jewelry dropped in haste or accident. A channel of water would once have run beneath your feet, washing things away as people sat together, side by side, exchanging gossip and laughter. And perhaps the occasional awkward silence? Privacy, that's a modern luxury. Relieving oneself was a social activity. They've sifted through these forgotten places with tiny brushes and careful hands. They found peach pits and olive stones, tossed away mid-snock. Little carved bone hairpins that slipped from untidy buns. Tiny glass beads that once adorned necklaces or tunics. The evidence of a personal live human, distracted, clumsy, just like you. Parasite eggs, sleeping unnoticed in the layers of ancient waste. Worm eggs, trapped in ancient soil, speaking softly of the illnesses that plagued ancient guts. Seeds from figs and dates, whispering of past meals eaten quickly on the go. Flecks of charcoal and ash, perhaps from a fire long ago. Someone used the latrine as a dumping ground for more than just the usual business. Even love notes scrawled onto scraps of worn papyrus, forgotten between trips to the latrine. The dice worn at the corners. Did someone lose a bet on their patience mid-game? It is strange, isn't it? How the toilet tells us more about daily life than the grandest temple. There are more places to visit, more ancient toilets to peer into. You came looking for the weirdest things found in ancient toilets? What you found instead was a quiet reminder that history is made not only in grand halls and battlefields, but in small, ordinary places where people were simply being human. Each one a little time capsule of human nature, forgotten and waiting beneath layers of earth and stone. Because here, in this space of quiet necessity, there is no pretense. It's just people, living their lives, one meal, one mishap, one small moment at a time. Or perhaps they tossed them away in frustration, deciding that fortune, like digestion, was best left to the gods. But you press on, brushing your fingers across ancient bricks, feeling the cool smoothness of the marble seats, the strange intimacy of places meant for privacy, now open to the sky. And why not? Isn't it in the smallest, most human places that the truest stories lie? In the shadowed corners where people drop their garden, well, other things too. Where life, in all its mess and awkwardness, quietly carried on. Before you lies a quiet Roman bathhouse, crumbling and still. It is odd, isn't it, how much we can learn about someone from what they left behind in places like this. You crouch by the edge of one such ancient Komodo-long bench-like seat, worn smooth by countless long-forgotten bottoms. You smile faintly at the thought. What did they talk about here on these cool stone benches? The rising cost of olive oil? The new gladiator in town? The neighbor's loud rooster that crowed before dawn? Perhaps they simply sighed, letting the noise of water fill the quiet between them. What was left behind? Well, the archaeologists would tell you. But it's not just lost trinkets. No, the layers of ancient toilets reveal something far less glamorous, yet infinitely more telling. And then, there are the things no one can quite explain. You sit back, letting your gaze drift over the empty space where people once gathered in this most peculiar of public places. Your footsteps echo as you rise, the dust of centuries swirling in the sunbeams. But for now, you stand in the hush of the past, your thoughts drifting like the breeze through the broken walls. And isn't that strangely comforting? Now you drift farther back in time, past the bustling Roman streets and into the dry, golden air of ancient Egypt. The light feels different here, softer somehow, dustier, stretched thin across stone walls, etched with gods and kings. You walk slowly beneath the gaze of statues too large to understand your humble quest, your sandals whispering across packed earth and cracked stone floors. Just small mud brick houses clustered together, and beside them latrines, simple pits dug into the earth. lined with stones, sometimes covered with a flat seat of wood or clay. And what did they leave behind, these pyramid builders? Bits of broken pottery used as wiping tools, called astraco, sharp-edged but practical. Scraps of everyday life tossed aside without ceremony. The temples and tombs tell one story. But you, still curious, still a little amused by your purpose, are drawn toward something simpler. Bits of linen, cloth-worn, torn, repurposed, and discarded. A small, half-forgotten workers' village at the edge of the desert, where life was far less glorious, but no less human. Or maybe a child, playing too close, dropping a small carved toy that no one dared retrieve. A sense that, across thousands of years, people were still people, eating dates by the handful, worrying about their health, losing things they meant to keep. Here, beyond the grand monuments, the builders of pyramids once lived, laughed, ate, and relieved themselves. No golden thrones here. The desert stretches wide beyond the village walls, endless and still. These places feel so far away from the stories we usually tell about ancient Egypt. No queens, no pharaohs, no battles carved in stone. Just the gentle pulse of daily life, quiet and unremarkable. In your mind, the eye of Horus glimmers faintly, still watching over whoever passed this way last. The next stop waits, quietly patient, as time hums softly beneath your feet. The ancient people of Egypt were careful observers of the body. Their medical papyri spoke of bowel troubles, of cures involving honey and figs, of purgatives and enemas. And in these humble latrines their struggles come alive in microscopic whispers. You stoop beside one, the desert wind stirring your hair as you peer into the darkness of the past. But sometimes the unexpected lingers. In one such pit, archaeologists found a strange mixture. Date stones, lentil skins, fish bones, and curiously a small amulet in the shape of the Eye of Horus. Was it lost in a hurry? Dropped by clumsy fingers? Or left as some protective charm against the less than glamorous dangers of the toilet pit? You smile quietly at the thought. Even here, where dust and waste meet, someone once believed in the power of protection. You brush the sand from your palms, the scent of the desert sharp in your nose. Parasitic eggs tell of contaminated water? Charred plant remains hint at burned offerings, or perhaps simply cooking gone wrong? And somewhere, perhaps, a moment of frustration? A worker cursing his luck as his only comb slipped from his pocket, lost to the depths below? You sit for a moment on the low wall beside the pit, letting the warmth of the sun soak into your skin. And yet there's a kind of comfort in that ordinariness. A lizard scurries by your foot, unbothered by your quiet presence. You rise slowly, dusting your hands, leaving the toilet pit to its long, silent rest. And so, onward. The world of ancient waste has more secrets to reveal, tucked away in forgotten corners and crumbling ruins. The air shifts again, softer now, tinged with the salt of the nearby sea and the faint aroma of crushed time beneath your feet. You walk the shaded streets of ancient Athens, where philosophers debated under the olive trees and merchants haggled in sun-dappled marketplaces. You slip instead into the humbler spaces of daily life, where ordinary Athenians lived and argued and ate too much lentil stew before making their way to, yes, you guessed it, the toilet. But you are not here for the lofty words of Socrates or the marble halls of the Acropolis. You wander through the narrow alleyways of a working-class neighborhood. Crumbling stone walls lean in close, vines spilling lazily over their tops, as if they, too, are dozing in the afternoon heat. Or perhaps a child, impatient with rules and dice, tossed it away in secret rebellion, leaving their mark on history in the most unexpected of places. Someone excuses themselves from the game, stepping away just for a moment and stand there in the dark. Fate intervenes. A worn bronze pin, delicate and lovely, once used to fasten a cloak or tunic. How strange, you think that what we lose in our most ordinary moments becomes the quiet relic of history. Of people who argued and laughed and sighed with relief at the end of a long day, never knowing that centuries later someone like you would stand here, tracing their footsteps and smiling quietly at their forgotten lives. Did someone lose it in haste, brushing their garment aside, unaware that it slipped into the shadows? And so, With a quiet breath, you continue on, your footsteps soft against the ancient earth. A lost piece, a forgotten moment, now waiting patiently for discovery centuries later. The streets feel almost familiar now, as if the voices of the past still linger in the cracks between the stones. The world feels quieter here, softer. You duck beneath a low lintel and step into a dim courtyard where a few small lintel clay-seated privas once stood, tucked away beside kitchens and bedrooms. They whisper of health and sickness, of diets rich in figs and grains, of parasites that lurked in the water and hid in the food. Microscopic evidence clings to the ancient soil roundworm eggs. Pinworm larvae, all the quiet struggles of human digestion left behind for modern science to find. And what did they leave behind, these ancient Athenians? The archaeologists who sifted through their waste found bits of olive pits, fish bones and lentil husks, simple fare from simple meals. But alongside them, tucked in the layers of compacted earth and waste, something curious. A few cracked gaming pieces, worn smooth from years of use. Did some unlucky soul drop their favorite piece mid-game, making a frantic dash to the privy without realizing the tiny treasure had slipped from their pouch? You imagine the scene. A quiet evening, oil lamps flickering, laughter echoing through the narrow streets. But beyond these tiny stories, the toilets of Athens tell you more. And then there are the unexpected items. Fragments of terracotta figurines, perhaps broken in play or quarrel and discarded out of sight. You pause, letting the afternoon breeze wash over you, stirring the leaves and scattering the faint scent of laurel and dust. The Athenian toilets, humble though they are, speak of lives lived fully and without fanfare. You step out of the courtyard, the shadows lengthening behind you. But there are more toilets to find, more curious things waiting in the dark corners of history. The sun sinks lower now, casting long, golden shadows across the rooftops of Rome. You wander once again through the eternal city, where marble columns rise like pale ribs against the sky, and the distant chatter of market stalls fades into a gentle hum. Instead, you slip into the quiet, steamy world of a Roman bathhouse, where marble walls once rang with the splash of water and the murmur of conversation. But today, your path turns away from the triumphal arches and crowded forums. You pause at an opening in the floor, where water once flowed beneath, whisking away what was left behind. A sponge on a stick, the famous Roman tersoria might once have rested nearby, soaking in vinegar or salt water, awaiting its next unfortunate user. The baths were more than a place to wash. They were where people gathered to share news, discuss politics, flirt, and sometimes inevitably tend to more practical bodily needs. Archaeologists found the expected grape seeds from lazy snacks, olive pits carelessly dropped, bits of bone from street food eaten in haste. Layers of waste preserve a record of Roman meals, lentils and barley, salted fish and figs, the occasional indulgence of honey cakes. Fragments of glass vessels that once held perfumed oils, washed away in the runoff that flowed beneath the toilets and out into the great Roman sewers. You picture the bathers coming and going, wrapped in towels, chatting softly as they tended to their needs. Perhaps it was simply life, unfolding in its quiet daily rhythm. How strange it must have felt to sit side by side in such a vulnerable moment, trusting the marble walls and rushing water to carry away their discomforts and secrets alike. Seeds, bones, and parasite eggs, resting in the ancient soil, speak of both abundance and ailment. But among these, stranger things linger. Hidden in corners, or tucked beside the caldarium and frigidarium, rows of communal toilets waited, cool and quiet, beneath stone benches. Perhaps it slipped from a finger slick with bathwater, lost with a gasp of dismay and an awkward scramble that failed to retrieve it. Or maybe someone tossed it deliberately into the depths, leaving behind a token of a love gone sour, letting the sewer carry away the memory. You rise and follow the shadows back into the fading light, leaving the lost ring and the ivory doll to their long rest beneath the stones. You walk slowly along one such row now. The marble is worn smooth beneath your fingers. Was it dropped in sorrow, or forgotten in a rush to rejoin the splash and laughter of the baths? You smile gently at the thought, how human it feels, to leave behind little pieces of yourself where no one thinks to look. And what remains in these places of necessity? There was a silver ring, small and delicate, its inscription worn by time. Nearby, a child's carved ivory doll, arms outstretched in perpetual surprise, rested in the muck. But the latrines also tell quieter stories. And then there are traces of the bathhouse itself. Flakes of pumice stone from those who scrubbed their skin clean. You sit for a moment on a low stone bench, the coolness seeping through your clothes. And yet, perhaps it wasn't strange at all. The bathhouse grows quiet now. Empty but for your soft footsteps and the memory of water running through the ancient pipes. Your journey isn't over. Somewhere beyond the hills and rivers, another ancient toilet waits, filled with the odd, forgotten relics of ordinary people. And so, you walk on, beneath a sky slowly turning to dusk, the past breathing gently at your back. Now your steps carry you far from the warm Mediterranean sun, across restless seas and wind-swept moors, where the air tastes of peat, smoke, and damp earth. You find yourself in the shadow of a crumbling Scottish castle, its stone walls rising stark and weather-worn against a gray sky. The wind tugs at your cloak as you cross the courtyard, where chickens once scratched and blacksmiths hammered at bent iron. But you slip past these remnants of noisy life, your feet drawing you toward a quieter, humbler corner of the castle, the garderobe. Ah, the medieval toilet. Archaeologists, scraping carefully through the ancient waste pits below, found more than they expected. Not a grand affair at all, but a narrow stone chute built into the outer wall, where your business dropped down into the wind, or, if you were lucky, into a pit far below. The stone seat is cracked but still strong, overlooking the vast, misty hills beyond. You sit quietly now, letting the wind whistle through the arrow slits. Outside, the clouds roll across the sky, thick and restless, as if the very weather remembers the weight of forgotten years. Privacy was ... relative, and warmth, entirely absent. How human it feels to imagine someone muttering under their breath, frustrated by a lost knife, or shivering as they pulled their cloak tighter around their shoulders. Just a brief, chilly pause in the busy life of the castle, more strange, lost things waiting to tell their quiet tales. You stand brushing your hands along the damp stone walls and step back out into the open air. The wind greets you again, cool and constant, carrying the scent of rain and distant heather. A place where a lord and a servant alike might find themselves alone, briefly removed from duty and perhaps pondering how much longer winter would last. You duck through a low doorway and find yourself in a tiny chamber, scarcely large enough to turn around. What did the people of this place leave behind in their cold little refuge of necessity? Charred oat husks tell of hurried breakfasts. Tiny fish bones, perhaps from salted herring carried up from the coast, cling to the damp soil. Even fragments of pottery, broken and tossed down the chute with a sigh of frustration, rest there still. But it is the stranger finds that make you smile softly. Carried on the wind or left from a snack hurriedly eaten between tasks, they now tell the quiet story of a landscape woven into daily life. A small iron knife, its handle worn smooth, lost or discarded in a moment of carelessness. A single leather shoe, too small for a grown man, was it dropped by a child too afraid to climb down after it? Or perhaps kicked off by accident in the rush to finish one's business before the cold numbed every finger and toe, and somewhere tangled among the layers of dirt and waste were the fragile seeds of bilberries and heather drifting down from the hills beyond. You lean back, letting the damp chill of the stones settle into your bones. Here in this Highland garderobe, there were no grand ceremonies. You smile, thinking how far from glamour the truth of history often is. And then, as all moments do, this one passes. There are more toilets to find, tucked away in forgotten corners of history. So you pull your cloak tighter and head down the worn path, leaving the cold garderobe and its quiet secrets behind. Now the winds shift once more, warm and dry, tasting faintly of sand and distant spice. You walk beneath a wide open sky, where the land stretches flat and endless, broken only by distant mountains rising like faded dreams. You are in a desert outpost along the Silk Road, where traders and travelers once gathered to exchange silken stories, spices and secret sand. Inevitably, where they stop to answer the quiet, unavoidable call of nature. The town is quiet now, half swallowed by the desert, its mud brick walls crumbling into dunes. Modest, unassuming, its pit lined with sun-baked bricks, and its seat worn smooth by countless travelers. You step carefully over the worn stones of an ancient caravanserai, where camels once rested in the courtyard and the scent of cumin and sweat filled the air. Tucked at the edge of the compound, beneath the shade of battered walls, lies a small, forgotten latrine. Pomegranate seeds, ruby bright once, now faded to dust. Slivers of walnut shells, cracked open along the journey. Traces of intestinal parasites tell of poor water, hurried meals, and the trials of life on the road. Were they, these travelers, who left behind such scattered traces? Merchants from Persia, monks from India, nomads from the steppes. Each carried stories you will never hear, dreams you will never know. Somewhere far beyond the horizon, another caravan stirs to life. Another traveler bends down beside another humble latrine. Charcoal flecks suggest that even this humble space may have doubled as a refuse pit, where travelers burned their rubbish before moving on. How curious it feels to find such delicate treasure in a place of such practical purpose. There are still more forgotten toilets to find, still more curious relics of ordinary life waiting in the quiet corners of the past. You kneel beside it, the dry wind stirring the hem of your cloak, and gaze into the quiet earth below. A scrap of silk, frayed and stained, perhaps torn from a sleeve or carelessly dropped. A carved bone spindle whorl, small and worn, belonging to someone who spun thread by lantern light as they waited for the caravan to depart. What did those ancient wanderers leave behind? Bits of dates, dried and sweet, tell of hurried snacks beneath a blazing sun. And among them, stranger things whisper from the past, perhaps most surprising of all, tiny fragments of Chinese porcelain. Far from home, broken and discarded by a traveler who carried fragile beauty across vast distances, but the soil speaks too of harsher truths. You sit back on your heels, letting your thoughts wander. And yet in this quiet, dusty latrine, their lives brush against yours across the centuries. You stand slowly, brushing sand from your palms, and look out across the endless plains. The Silk Road winds on, quiet and patient beneath the sky. And your journey, too, is not yet done, so you walk on. Your footsteps soft in the sand as the wind carries your thoughts like threads across the desert. The air is damp now, thick with the scent of rain-soaked cobblestones and chimney smoke. You walk slowly down the winding alleys of medieval London, where crooked houses lean in close like gossiping neighbors, and puddles glisten in the pale morning light. The city hums faintly with life fishmongers calling from the docks, bakers setting out their wares, a distant church bell tolling the hour, a medieval toilet, humble and foul-smelling once, now still and silent beneath layers of forgotten years. But you pass by these lively streets and slip instead into a narrow, forgotten yard, where history settled quietly beneath the grime. Before you lies a cesspit, deep and dark, cut into the earth behind a row of timber-framed houses. Apple cores and plum stones, peach pits, and hazelnut shells all, the sweet remnants of long-ago snacks, tossed away with little thought. You crouch beside its edge, your breath slow and steady, and wonder what stories waited here, in this quiet, neglected place. Parasite eggs, whispering of stomach aches and sleepless nights. Traces of herbs, mint, chamomile, wormwood, perhaps taken as crude remedies for those same ailments. London in the Middle Ages was not a gentle place. Fires swept through its streets. Plagues whispered through its alleys. They still took comfort in warm herbs and worn shoes. Yet here, in this quiet toilet pit, life carried on in its stubborn, ordinary way. Did someone drop it by accident in the dark, cursing softly as it slipped from their fingers? You step away from the cesspit, letting it rest in peace beneath the muddy yard. Or did a servant, weary of scrubbing dishes, quietly toss it away when no one was watching? The archaeologists, with their careful hands and patient hearts, found the traces first. But there were stranger things too. A pewter spoon, bent and tarnished, resting among the refuse. Nearby, a tiny leather shoe, its stitching still faintly visible, spoke of a child's careless play or, perhaps, a sudden trip and tumble in the muddy yard. Where had it come from? A piece of a merchant's precious goblet? A fragment of stained glass from a nearby church, stolen or scavenged or simply lost? And beneath these things, deeper still, the waste held tiny secrets of daily life. But what caught the archaeologists most by surprise was a shard of blue glass, delicate and thin, far finer than anything a common household would own. You sit for a while on the edge of the pit, letting the drizzle bead softly on your shoulders. People still ate sweet fruits in the summer. They still lost their spoons in the dark. And somehow, all of that feels close now, as if the distance between your world and theirs is not measured in centuries, but in these small human moments. The rain falls gently as you rise, the city's hum returning to your ears. There are still other places to visit, other strange and humble stories waiting beneath the surface. And so, with your cloak damp, but your heart quiet, you walk on the streets of London, slowly fading behind you like mist. The path leads you farther back, to where rivers carve through dust and time. You find yourself beneath a sky, wide and pale, where the Euphrates once flowed bright and strong. The land of Mesopotamia, where kings once ruled from clay brick palaces and scribes pressed soft reeds into damp tablets. But your curiosity does not seek palaces or temples today. Instead, you step softly through the remains of a royal household in ancient Babylon, where beneath the tiled courtyards and painted walls, the simplest spaces tell the richest tales. Find it tucked away behind a kitchen courtyarder, narrow vaulted chamber lined with baked brick, an ancient toilet connected by clever channels to a drainage system below. Even in a palace, someone had to think about where waste would go. You kneel by the opening, your hand brushing the rough texture of the ancient bricks. Time is thick here, heavy with forgotten names and daily routines. What did the people of Babylon leave behind in this quiet place? The archaeologists found lentil husks and date stones, remnants of a region rich in fertile fields and sweet fruits. Tiny fish bones, perhaps from the rivers, mixed with charred grain from household kitchens. But in these layers, stranger things rested too. A clay tablet fragment, small and worn, inscribed with part of a list. Was it dropped in haste by a distracted scribe? Or thrown away deliberately, its message no longer needed? Nearby, a fragment of lapis lazuli bead, bright blue against the dust. Precious, rare, and somehow lost in the most unceremonious of places. And deeper still, the remains of medicinal herbs, coriander, cumin, juniper, clinging faintly to the ancient soil. Evidence, perhaps, of someone's attempt to soothe a troubled stomach or ease a restless night. You sit back against the cool bricks, letting your thoughts wander. These were the quiet human moments beneath the grandeur of ancient empires. Amid the royal decrees and temple hymns, someone crouched here in the dim privacy of the palace latrine, perhaps listening to the faint clatter of servants in the kitchens beyond. You wonder if they felt relief, or simply routine. If they worried about the coming harvest, the favor of the gods, or the quarrel with a neighbor that morning, when somehow it is this moment, not the building of ziggurats, not the march of armies, that feels most real, most alive. You rise slowly, leaving the cool, quiet space behind, the scent of earth and faint traces of time lingering on your hands. The palace stretches silent around you now, its walls crumbling back into dust, but beneath your feet in the quiet channels of forgotten toilets, the voices of daily life remain, soft and steady. You step back into the sun, where the rivers wind far beyond the horizon. There are more stories waiting hidden beneath stones and earth, in places few people think to look. And so you walk on, the wind warm on your back, as ancient Mesopotamia fades into the distance behind you. Now your journey carries you eastward, where mist clings to tiled rooftops and red lanterns sway gently in the morning breeze. You walk along the stone-paved streets of an ancient Chinese city, where merchants once shouted their wares and tea steam curled from open doorways. But as always, your path turns quietly away from the grand pagodas and busy market stalls. You slip down a narrow alleyway, past stacked bundles of silk and rows of glazed pottery, until you find a small, humble courtyard behind a tea house. There, tucked against the wall, sits a simple latringus, a hole lined with wood and brick, shaded by worn shutters. You pause beside it, letting the quiet hum of the city fade into the background. What forgotten things waited here, beneath the noise of emperors and scholars? The layers of waste revealed delicate traces of daily life. Cherry pits and melon seeds tossed away between sips of green tea. Fish bones and rice husks, remnants of simple meals eaten between long hours of trade and toil. But deeper down, stranger things rested. A porcelain hairpin, its glaze cracked and faded, once held a young woman's hair in place. Was it lost in haste, slipped from her bun as she hurried back to the shop, or left behind in a moment of quiet frustration, its beauty no longer needed? A bronze coin, smooth with age, lay nearby. Perhaps it slipped from a merchant's robe or was discarded in disappointment after a bad deal. And then, almost too small to notice, a torn scrap of bamboo slipped, the kind used for writing before paper became common. The characters faded, unreadable now, but you wonder what they once said. A note to a friend, a forgotten shopping list, or a poem abandoned with a sigh in this most unlikely of places. The soil held other secrets too. Traces of medicinal herbs like ginger and cinnamon used to soothe upset stomachs. Parasite eggs that spoke of illnesses carried quietly through the crowded streets. Flecks of charcoal from burned incense mingling with the earth as a quiet offering or simple household waste. You sit for a while on the worn stone steps, watching the shadows shift across the courtyard. In the distance, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer fades into birdsong, and the wind stirs the faint scent of dumplings and smoke. It strikes you how close their lives feel, how small and human their troubles were, beneath the grand stories of dynasties and conquests. They laughed and loved and argued, and sometimes they dropped things where no one expected to find them again. You rise slowly, brushing dust from your hands, leaving the tea-house latrine to its quiet rest. The street welcomes you back with its gentle chaos, but you carry with you the stillness of that forgotten space. One more stop remains on your journey. One final toilet, waiting patiently in the shadows of the past. And so, with a quiet smile, you walk on, the lantern light flickering softly overhead as imperial china slips away behind you. And so your journey brings you to one last place. No grand city, no ancient empire, just a quiet countryside farmstead. It's forgotten by history, yet alive once with the ordinary hum of human life. The land is gentle here. Grass sways softly beneath a low, endless sky. Birds circle overhead, their cries distant, as if reminding you that life goes on, whether or not anyone writes it down. You follow a worn path between low stone walls, where sheep once grazed and muddy boots once tread. There, beside a thatched cottage, you find it. A simple pit dug by hand, lined with rough planks and crumbling stones. The household latrine. Unremarkable, and yet, somehow the most human of them all. You kneel beside it, the earth cool beneath your fingertips, and listen not with your ears, but with your heart. The archaeologists who came here expected little, but as they sifted through the layers of discarded life, they found small treasures tucked among the soil and waste. Apple cores, their seeds still intact. Barley grains and nutshells, remnants of modest meals eaten by firelight. A worn wooden spindle, carved with simple care, used by hands long forgotten. Perhaps it slipped from a lap during an evening of quiet spinning, lost among the shadows and never retrieved. A broken clay pipe, stained by the lips of someone who found comfort in its smoke after a long day's work. And most curious of all, a small, carved toy horse, crudely shaped, but lovingly worn. Was it dropped by a sleepy child, too young to understand that some losses last forever? Or left behind on purpose, a quiet offering to the earth below? You smile softly. Of all the places you visited, Rome and Babylon, Athens and China, it is here, in this small, forgotten field, that the quiet hum of human life feels clearest. No marble columns, no painted palaces, just people living quietly, eating simple meals, spinning wool by the hearth, tending their sheep, answering nature's call beneath the open sky. And perhaps that is where the story truly lives. It's not in the treasures lost, but in the lives lived. You sit there for a while, the breeze cool on your face, the grasses rustling softly around you. The past feels close now. Not grand, not distant, but near and ordinary and kind. Eventually you stand, leaving the quiet latrine to its rest. The earth will keep its secrets a little longer. The wind will carry away your footprints. And life, quiet, ordinary life, will continue as it always has. And you, traveler of forgotten toilets, walk on, a little slower perhaps, a little softer. It's because even in the humblest places, you have found what history often forgets, that we are all, in the end, human.